So hi everyone. I see some familiar faces in the room who I saw last year at Podcamp. But if you don't know me, I'm June. I do a lot of things. I'm a multi-hyphenate, as they say. I don't know if you watch TED Talks, but if you Google my multi-hyphenate, that's one of my favorite ones because that pretty much describes what I am. But I do a bunch of things. So I write. The main thing I do is writing. It's gotten me into a lot of places I never thought I would. I've been writing pretty much my whole life, from when I had a little pink diary with Hello Kitty on it to writing freelance for Maclean's, for Vice, for 929, all those places. And it's really helped me learn a lot about myself, but also learn a lot about a lot of other people too. And it's the basis of everything I do, from social media marketing to brand strategy to consulting to content creation, you name it, I've probably done it. It's been about 12 years of doing this, so yes. I strategize. So now these days, I do mostly strategy. I consult other people on what they can and should do. So if you have a podcast, you're like, I don't know how to do social media, how to get out there, you call me. And actually, I have spaces open if you want to consult, so holler at me afterwards. I love culture. I am a huge nerd. I love movies. I love podcasts. I love music. They are all part of my mix. I have Spotify Premium because I hate the ads, even though you get ads now, but I listen to music pretty much every day, so my Spotify Wrapped is always very interesting. But it's also helped me to learn, again, about, we live in a multicultural society, and so it's only fair that you learn about others, you have fair interactions, and do all those things. But I get to use those for my job. So sometimes I have big brands who are asking me, hey, what does Riz mean? And then I have to do a whole presentation after asking my 15-year-old stepkid or my 15-year-old nephew about what it is. And then they tell me and I tell the brands. So that's always fun. But then sometimes they're like, hey, can you help us recreate this moment for us? I'm like, no problem, let's go. And I love podcasts. I don't have a podcast myself. I made one a few years ago with friends, and it was more of a passion project. So that was a dog years ago. And but I've been producing podcasts. I've worked with the Globe Content Studio to produce podcasts for brand clients. I have been a podcast guest host. I have been a guest on podcasts. I guess the most famous one I was on was Endless Thread. I don't know if anyone knows that one. It's really good. I used to live in Sweden. I wrote an article for Refining 29 about Swedengate. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. Or on my website, there's an article about it. And Endless Thread asked me to be on their podcast. It was super fun. So, and then my current podcast rotation is Keep It, Today Explains. Anyone listen to Today Explains? Okay. I'm a huge nerd, news nerd, because media and news is my background. Vibe Check, The Town with Matt Bellany, Prestige GB Podcast, because I love Star Wars podcast, and The Read. Those are all my current rotation. There are so many others I could mention, but I won't because we only have so much time. So yeah, you're here to talk about social media, and who would you say who's a power user here? So power user is like, you're on it every day, you're typing stuff, you're posting stuff at least once a day. Who is a power user? Okay, so we got a few in here. Who's here more as a lurker? They have accounts, but they watch other people do things. I have a feeling we'd be more lurkers. And then depending on what platform that is, like for me, I'm a lurker on TikTok. I love TikTok. Have I posted a single TikTok? Absolutely not. I've done it for clients, but not myself, because because this is part of my job, I have to watch things and then report and then provide advice on what the culture is. And most times the culture is happening on TikTok, and then you translate for other people. But no matter what kind of user you are, there's probably a few truths that you realize that, one, it's not a safe space anymore. There's a lot of just noise, right? You go online and especially Twitter. I used to love Twitter. Twitter was the reason I got a lot of the roles, a lot of the my freelance writing career started on Twitter because I connected with editors. Half of my jobs I've ever worked, I found through Twitter. So Twitter was a good place for me. It was where I found out about different social movements, about what was happening in different parts of the world, stuff that I didn't learn. I learned about other people. I had friends that last year I met a friend in Chicago, and we had been Twitter friends and Facebook friends for 20 years, and we finally met in person. So I've made these real online connections in real life. But those days are mostly over because everyone is sad, everyone is mad, everyone is distressed, And everyone's just pissed at each other, and everyone looks at each other like the enemy. And so social media is a huge reflection of that. And so that's why if you feel like it's not a safe space, or you feel like you're not happy, that is by design. Because as you probably realize, you're going to click on something more often if it's negative, if it's outrage, if it's a rage bait click is what we call it. If it's something that if it's the latest thing that Donald Trump did, or that Elon Musk did, or that this company did, you're going to click on that rather than, yes, cute cat accounts are great too. I follow a lot of animal accounts on TikTok. But if those are nice, but they don't get as much attention as the negative stuff, or the doom and gloom, or who else doom scrolls at night sometimes. It's okay, safe space. This is a safe space. But also the folks in charge do not have your best interests at heart, because at the end of the day, we are in a capitalist society, and it's money that's in the driver of all of this. But I think what's changed, especially in the last 5 years, is that it's always been about money, but it's less now about, who was on Facebook 20 years ago when you need who was on Facebook when you needed your school email? Yes, my people. Okay, so I don't feel that old. So that at that point, it was about making friends, making connections, whatever else. These days, it's still about that if you're still on Facebook. I'm barely on it, maybe just for the groups or for Facebook Marketplace. But if you are on these platforms, it's mostly because you're there to serve a need, get what you need, and then get out. Because most of the time, you don't want to stay there. Because it's a weird place, a scary place, and most of the time, I think it's mostly just an annoying place. It's just all this noise. You want to cut it out of your life, unless you have to do the work to curiously and meticulously curate your feeds that you get what makes you happy, or just log off completely, which I say to most people, like, if you're unhappy, just log off and go back tomorrow. So this is the State of the Union in a lot of ways, because it's not a great place. However, it's not all doom and gloom. But before we get to that, just a couple of quick stats. I love that. So, ironically, we spend less. Who usually tracks the hours on their phones? Like, you have spent so much hours less. Like, ironically, when I'm at my place, I spend more time on my phone. When I'm at my boyfriend's house, I spend way less time on my phone because there's connection, right? So anytime I go this week, I was like, oh shit, I use it 3 hours more? That's not good. I gotta get offline. But then I'm by myself, I need connection, and so I'm on my phone or on my laptop. But ironically, these are from We Are Social, who is an agency who's here in Toronto, but they're based in London. They have a report that comes out every year called Digital State of the Digital Union, and it's really good. It's available for anybody and has super detailed data, but also some good narration around it. So I took a couple of slides from them. So despite what you think about whatever your own patterns are, in general, we are actually spending less time on social, because I think everyone realizes that we're not happy, we don't want to be here, and that there has to be something more to this. So we're going somewhere else. And not necessarily offline completely. We're just not spending as much time on TikTok or whatever else because an influencer is selling shit to you every 2 seconds, or I can't watch something without being a pop-up coming up, or I can't listen to a podcast without having to fast forward through most of the ads, which I always do. Even though I'm the one who probably put them there. But we spend less time on social net, and that's been happening. That's been a trend for the last 2 years, which is kind of crazy to me. I thought we were spending more time. I think it's just whatever we spend online now, it's just more intense. We're more intense with our arguments. We're more intense with how we interact with each other. We want to follow that celebrity, and we want to hate watch something, which I never understood hate watching or hate content, because I'm like, why are you just don't interact with that thing. Anyway, next, how and where do we spend our time online? So the top 3 reasons, according to this report, one is you're keeping in touch with your friends and family, which I think most of the people in the room, this is what we do, right? We're keeping in touch with our friends here and abroad or around the world. We're filling our spare time. I found that one the most interesting. You're filling your spare time. You're in the line at Service Ontario. What are you doing? You're on your phone. You're scrolling through, you're doom scrolling at night before you go to bed. Just me? You're filling your time by watching TV while scrolling your phone. That is a thing where a lot of people are doing that now. I found that stat the most interesting because that's mostly just passive. It is passive. It's not engaging. And as a social media marketer, we hate that. We want you to engage. We want you to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, whatever, comment. We need you to do those actions so that it makes sense for us to keep selling things to you. But if you're just passively spilling your time, that doesn't do anyone any good. But less as a marketer, more of a person, I'm just like, well, that could be time well spent somewhere else. And we read news stories, especially the last month. So we're reading news stories on what's happening. And as a news junkie and someone who studied media, I want to, it's a second nature for me. It's a natural flex. I need to be able to find out what's going on. But lately I have to be intentional about, okay, that is enough. I don't want to hear more about that thing. I don't need to hear 5 analysis on why this is bad. I know it's bad. I don't need to hear 5 things about why it's bad. And so those top 3 reasons are super interesting to me. The average person uses 6 different social networks per month. So again, for the power users, what are the main ones that you're on? You can just yell them out. LinkedIn, okay. TikTok, Facebook, okay. Instagram. Who's on Instagram the most? That's my favorite. Who's on LinkedIn the most? Okay. I said TikTok already, right? Did I say TikTok? Who is on Twitter still? Blue Sky. I was going to say Blue Sky. Who's on Blue Sky? Yay, my people are joining on Blue Sky. I'm still on Twitter because I have my account, but I'm not really there. I'm more on Blue Sky now, but I have my Twitter account because I've got history on there and downloaded stuff. But yeah, the top 3 social are still, 2 of them are meta platforms, Instagram and Facebook, and then there's TikTok. It'll be interesting to see where that goes when TikTok gets banned again in a month. I personally don't think it'll get banned, but who knows what is happening these days. So we'll see what happens with that. And the last couple of stats I want to share with you was podcast specific, which is super cool because this is a podcast community and I want to be able to talk with all about that. So this is very interesting to me as a marketer because I'm always looking to see what the latest trends are. And the most interesting ones to me are demographics. And so women are actually driving the podcast world. I'm sure most of you have known this already because you are podcasters. 25 to 34. So Gen Z / young millennials are the ones who are listening more. I think Call Her Daddy is the biggest indicator of that. There are other podcasts like the Girl Boss podcast, a few others that are speaking to this. And most of those are cultural too. There are celebrity gossip podcasts. There are ones that anything that would be considered a lifestyle in a magazine or online. Those are the podcasts that are getting the most popular. And 1 in 5 online adults listen to at least 1 podcast each week. Not a power user like me who listens to like 6 each week, but that's because I have it in the background while I listen to while doing other things. And women are actually more likely than men to seek out brands in social media, which is important as a marketer to me because if you're trying to promote your podcast, the people that will engage more with you and not just passively listen are more times than not, they're women. They're the ones who will join your live show. They're the ones who will subscribe to your Patreon. They're the ones who will buy merch. They're the ones who will do a meetup outside. They're most likely, it's not to say that the men, obviously y'all are part of the crowd and this all that too, but the actions that actually monetize a podcast are mostly done by women, and I actually think that's pretty cool. So the good news is, social media is still worth investing your time in. Do not throw it away. As someone who's been online since MySpace and Tumblr days, Black Planet, Asian Avenue, all of those things, I still really am interested in it, and I still like being around it. And as someone who's made a career in it, I still think it's important because the reach is still, just like TV used to be the thing to reach everyone at one time, social media has now replaced that. Even Nielsen has to consider streaming and stuff, although still don't do it very well. But even Nielsen's had to adapt streaming and listening and all of that stuff into it now. So it's still worth investing your time in, but you must be intentional about it. That is where it is. And so it's worth it because like I said, reach. You can find people to be a part of your community. There is room for everybody. You think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to start this there. I'm not going to promote this thing because there's 10 other podcasts about brains. There's 10 other podcasts about nail art. There's 10 other podcasts about shoes. But no one has your podcast about shoes. No one has your angle about things, right? There are great opportunities to create great content. The cool thing about social, and especially this is where TikTok has pretty much kicked everyone out of the water, is that they made it accessible and easy to create your way. That's why that's why Meta is still Instagram and Facebook. That's why they are still trying to copy TikTok even after all this time. That's why they finally added a dislike button on Instagram, or they have upvotes and downvotes like Reddit. So they're just trying to copy it, and they can't because they can't buy it, although they did try at one point. But all that to say is there are different aspects of the platforms to create good content. You find the one that works for you and do it, but don't be everywhere. And then storytelling is one of the oldest ways to share information, but you have to do it your way using what's best for your brand. So if it's YouTube, cool. If it's Instagram, cool. Is it visual or is it text? Is it a community in Reddit or is it a chat on Discord? These are all different ways that you can express yourself, but you have to find your thing. You can't just spray what we call spray and pray and hope it works. That is the worst thing you can do. And it's one thing I always have to tell clients. I'm like, and these have been huge, big conglomerate brands. They're like, we need to be everywhere. Have we been on Be Real yet? Be Real is, once Be Real came out, I was like, this is not going to go anywhere. And it did it. So the real thing is adoption. If people are adopting it and telling their friends about it, which is what happened with TikTok after 4 years of being Musical.ly, then yes, it's going to take off. If Instagram takes off after a while, then yes. And once Android people want to get in because it's always iPhone first, then that's usually an indicator that regular people want to use it. But anyway, tell a good story, find a good way to share it, and make it fun, make it engaging, make people want to interact with you and keep having a relationship with you, and it will work for you. But the better news is that social media is just one tool in your community building toolbox. Because social media is not part of the marketing. It's just one part of your marketing mix. It's just one part of how you tell your brand story. It's how you interact with people on and offline. You can't keep yourself confined to social media because life happens on social media, but it doesn't always happen on social. You have to log off, turn the machine off. So you have to do that. So you have options on and offline for your brand and your community to go along with it. You have to diversify your visibility and impacts. So, all that to say is, going to the community aspect of it, the billionaires, politicians, and media barons aren't coming to save us. In fact, they just want to make money of us and then just dispose of us. We are all we've got. So my background, one of my first areas I worked in when I was in marketing was in nonprofit. And I learned a lot about community building, community education, community events, event networking, all of that stuff through that. And even just my family, that's what we do, right? And so I'm really about community action, but you always think of, we're going to be a community, we're going to be active in the community. It doesn't always look like this. Who knows what this is? Please tell me there's other 80s babies in this room. Okay, great. What's up? Wins up. Captain Planet. He's a hero. Sorry, don't get me started. I love cartoons. But everyone thinks, oh my God, I want to be active in my community. I want to do something. I want to be part of a grassroots movement. They think it has to be like this, a super global coalition that's like, we're going to save the world. Some people do that, but it's not for everybody. And it's honestly thankless work. You should not be doing that. What's better is that you do it locally. And so community organizing and activism can look like this too. There's a lot of ways to do this. And actually, I put myself in there. That's when I was at UNICEF Canada. I was doing marketing for them for a little while. And I led a community workshop with some amazing university students. And they insisted they take that picture. I was if I look weird and awkward, it's because I was like, oh my God, why are they taking this picture? But it was honestly one of the best parts of that job was getting to connect with communities offline. These students came from all over the province to be at UNICEF Canada's offices for a day of networking, a day of organizing, a day of really us teaching them how to really promote UNICEF's message in their own campuses. And so there's different ways to do it. You can do it for work, you can do it for school, and you can do it for yourself. But there's a lot of ways that you can do it. So what is a social movement? So the way I'm going to frame this is like doing podcasts as like a way of a local movement and approaching the way that you build your community as a way of like community activism, because I see a lot of parallels within that. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. People say in marketing, you have to be authentic, whatever else, but why not actually be authentic, being like purposeful and intentional with your brand if you want to make this podcast about a different part of your community or stuff that you love to talk about. But building community is the same way as building activism. And so social movements, officially, purposeful organized groups that strive to work towards a common goal. So in the podcast world, these would be the ones where like, we're going to save the world and get the big money and the big networks. These would be the Diary of the CEO, the Call Her Daddies, the Read, and yes, even Joe Rogan. Those podcasts, for better or for worse, do change public opinion. They can shift public opinion. They can shift movements, whatever else. But that's because most times they're already celebrities. They already have a following. Not everybody has that or honestly wants that, because being famous is not cool. I've met famous people and most of them are not cool, I'll tell you that. Most of them are not cool. They're just extraordinary. They're ordinary people with extraordinary talents. Local movements are where things truly happen. They're where you actually make incremental change and you can sustain for long amounts of time. So you operate on the level of town, city, or within a small entity like college campuses, like we did for UNICEF. So you think of your podcast as a local movement that brings people together, because it does. They're all focused around one singular purpose, which is, I love knitting. I love art. I love anime. I love Captain Planet. I love I love 80s cartoons. I love the G.I. Joe PSA announcements. 80s babies? Okay, cool. I love all those things. So local podcasts. I don't know, Shirley's not in the room. Black Canadian creators. That's a local movement that's been happening a long time in the Canadian podcast community. We have Bad and Bitchy, which is a podcast from my friend Erica. ISO Radio, which has been going on for a while here in Toronto, and Extra Game. These are all local Toronto podcast communities that have been happening, but they also happen to be mostly Black creators. And so I'm going to be mentioning that a lot because A, I'm one of the only Black creators here, and B, it's Black History Month. So you're going to get some examples. So there's a great article on Medium from a community activist named Marta Brosco, and she has a great Medium post about community organizing 101, how to start a social movement. And the fifth point is mine, but I took most of the stuff from her because I think it's a very basic way to talk about community activism, but also it goes parallel with building a podcast community, but also a content community. And so these are your 5 steps. She has 4, but I added a 5th. Anchor your intention in the placement collaborator. Prototype your activity, event, or new space. Establish regularity and predictability. Involve others by inviting shared ownership. Go do the thing and let things happen. So what does all of that mean? But before you do any of that, you have to take inventory and really do a lot of self-reflection. I find this is where a lot of that happens. This is what has to happen before you go out and do things, because whether it's brands or individuals, I find a lot of people that I work with don't know what they want to do, what their purpose is before they go out. And so before you do anything, also you have to protect your brands. That's like making sure you have your copyright papers in order. You have your websites, all of those domains. You need to have all that basic stuff in order, but also your content and your purpose. Take care of yourself and your brand first before you have other people, which is also a really huge tenet in community organizing. You can't pour from an empty vessel. You have to help yourself before you are equipped to help others. So before you do any of that, this is your brand health check. Why are you making this podcast? What keeps you going? In the last session with Ray, he was talking about most podcasts don't last past 10 episodes. I understood that because I'm like, yeah, making a podcast is really hard. I've done it. And that was just with a company. Never mind for, I can't imagine what it's like doing your own podcast. You guys are awesome for that. But what keeps you going? What makes you do 2, 3, and 4 seasons? What does success look like to you? Does it mean a lot of downloads? Does it mean a lot of followers? Does it mean you have a community that engages with you? Does it mean you have enough people to have an event? Does it mean you monetize on YouTube? It can mean different things. How would you like to change? First, yourself, and then how do you want to change outside? So is there something that you're like, this is wrong, or this is cool, or none of people are talking about this? What change will look like a success because you did something about it? What do you want to learn along the way, right? The journey, the work, the ugly stuff, the grunt work. No one talks about it on social media because everyone talks about the beginning and then the results, but no one talks about the middle, right? And so that's just as important as anything else. What do you want to learn along the way? What kind of skills do you want to pick up? What kind of technology do you want to learn about? What kind of social media what kind of social media platforms do you want to learn about? Do you want to finally make the leap to YouTube? Cool. YouTube is pretty great, but is it for you? You have to figure that out. Who do you want to build with? A lot of people do it by themselves, but you can't do it all by yourself. This is a life lesson I have to learn by myself too. But you have to figure out who you want to help. Who wants to help you? How do you want to delegate stuff if it gets big enough? When it gets big enough? What does your ideal community look like? And this also means like your internal community, but also who are you talking to? And then what kind of culture do you want to be surrounded by? If all that to say is if hopefully it's a subject where it has somewhat of a crossover where anyone who identifies with that thing can look like anything or can be anything. If it's too homogenous, there might be an issue. So, and that could mean different things for different things, but I'll leave that to you to decide. So first thing is anchor your intention in the place of creator. So when you anchor your intentions, it's, I'm going to be this, this, and that, but it takes a long time to get to that work, right? It takes a lot of work to get to that point. What platforms are you going to use? Are you still going to be on Facebook? Cool. Facebook, ironically, is still, this is what a lot of marketers know and a lot of people hate to admit, Facebook is still effective. Yeah, it sucks. Mark Zuckerberg sucks, but it still works. It's still the best place to sell ads. It's still the best place to reach people. And honestly, if you're like me, you're still on it because the groups are still pretty good. There's a neighborhood group I'm in, I live at Young and Atkinson, there's a group for that. And honestly, I'm mostly just eating popcorn while watching it because some people are acting like real Karens over there. But one of our current MPP, Jill Andrew, is still in there, and oftentimes she'll just pop up and be like, hey guys, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on? Both our city councilor and our MPP are in there. And I think that's pretty cool because that way they're able to get constituents' views and opinions. Sometimes, I mean, they both go out quite a bit, but they also are able to do that for us who don't know. We see them on the screen, we're like, I don't want to talk to you. But they see what we're saying because they're like, they genuinely want to know what's going on. So for them, Facebook is still extremely effective, right? And so is Blue Sky good for you? I mean, Blue Sky is maybe too early because it's only just started to really grow since last year. Is TikTok your place? Is Instagram your place? Is YouTube your place? Cool. Is Discord your place? Who will you work with? Again, is this your friends? Is this your collaborators, your coworkers? Either way, it should be someone that you trust and that who you know will stick through you through tough times. Because working with anyone is hard, especially when you both have very strong opinions or you're very, very driven. You want this thing and you want people to fall in line, but it doesn't always work like that because you don't want to be a dictator, do you? Who is your ideal listener? What do they look like? This is demographics for marketers, but in general, who's the ideal person? Or like, you have personas or you have archetypes. Those still work. I would use them more as a guide than a hard guide to do that. But you have an idea of who is listening to me because you want to be like, who am I talking to? Who can I relate to? And honestly, who can relate to me? Because you can just say anything, but it doesn't mean people will listen to you, right? There's no guarantee. What message am I sending? You might think you're sending one message, but how it sends to the other person can be completely different. You might be like, I love pizza. And some people are like, oh, so you don't like gluten-free pizza? What's up with that? So it's just the way that you say it and the way that you get it across. And you have to be intentional about, and not to say like, I have to check every box for diversity. I have to check every box to be considerate of other people. But you have to be mindful of this is where you're really more intentional in your own purpose and all that so that your people will find you, right? And then how we get that message across, how often, whatever else. These are always how to find your audience. And you have to be consistent. Consistency is key here because that's one thing that is still constant throughout the very big changes in social media over the last, 20 years. Consistency still works. You have to post consistently. You have to maintain engagement consistently with your audience. You have to talk with them, not at them. These are things you have to think about. And you have to pivot because sometimes folks will get older, right? You have folks that were with you for 15, 20 years. They might have kids now. Are you considering that? Your content actually may not change, but the way you talk about it might, right? So it depends on how people move throughout their lives and how you move with them too. All these questions are essential to finding your audience and building your community from the ground up. And you have to revisit them often because, like I said, they change. That's the only constant, unfortunately. So a good example of this is Vibe Check. This is one of my favorite podcasts happening right now. I'm a member of their group chat. I have paid $8 a month to be part of their Patreon, and it's fun. I did it for research, but I may stay, depending on how my budget is. It's three guys who I've been following for years on social media. Two of them are writers. Soyeda is one of my favorite writers. He's a poet, and he writes a lot of great articles. Zach Stafford and Sam Sanders were journalists in different areas. They all happen to be Black and gay. And so their takes on different things. And ironically, this started from their own group chat on WhatsApp. And now it's a huge community because now it's actually mostly women who are in the group chat. But they've managed to find their place in different areas, and because they already have their followings from their different but very similar backgrounds, they've been able to create a community out of a new one out of all of that. And so they're on Spotify, they're on Apple Podcasts, they're on Stitcher in terms of audio. They're on TikTok with clips of TikTok and Instagram with clips of their podcasts. They've made big time with That's in Times Square with Amazon Music. They have an Apple Podcasting for Black History Month as well. They have a social media intern making memes for them, and they're really funny because memes still get across, especially on Instagram. And so they're in different places, but the central idea of it all is still the podcast, and that the way that they get their takes on, it's mostly about social issues. So, and because they're American, a lot of it is about what's happening with the government right now, but it's also about Black gay culture. It's also about poetry. It's also about writing. These are all things that I like and care about. And so, but even there's folks who are not Black, not gay, who are part of this community, and they still find meaning in that, right? And so, as long as you have that central tenet, who they are, what they stand for, who their ideal person is, who's listening to them, and then even within there's other group chats on the Patreon. There are 3 different chats going about Get Millie Black, Severance, and The White Lotus. All great shows. You should watch them. But yeah, this is a great example of finding your place and being intentional about where you're going to be and who you're working with. Okay, so prototype your activity. So a few things to prototype your activity. So this could be anything from an in-person Stitch and Bitch, which a friend of mine runs every month, which is pretty awesome. Or it can be a live event, or it can be a podcast chat, or it can be a live on Twitch, whatever else. So you create an event description, you decide your communication channels, you run your activity, and most importantly, you get feedback and find out what went wrong, what went well, and you do it all over again. And the last one is actually the most important, especially from a marketing standpoint too, because everyone wants to post and stuff, but no one actually takes the time to do the reporting and analytics and all of that stuff. That's where I come in at the end of a project or end of a campaign, and just look at everything and being like, what story can I tell from all this data? Who's coming in from where? Where's our traffic coming from? Who's actually engaging with our stuff? Oh, we had no idea that moms who are 30 like this stuff. Next time, let's cater to them too. But you have to just it's so simple and yet so hard. If anyone's ever run events before, it's hard to do, right? And just to organize all that stuff, it's all in the preparation, it's all in the takedown, right? It's all those 2 things at the end of the process that are the most important. The actual event obviously is great too, but you have to be, and you have to make it an extension of it's an extension of your brand. It's an extension of your community and a celebration a lot of times, especially when it comes to podcasts. So a good example of this is The Read. Again, one of my other favorite podcasts. So this is when they came to Toronto in, oh my gosh, it was way before the pandemic. I feel like this was 2015 or 2016. This is a long time ago. So they've been doing this show for 12 years. The 2 hosts, Crystal and Kid Fury, met online on Twitter in the early 2010s, and they're both creators online. And then they got together and made this podcast, and it's pretty much been a Black culture revolution ever since. And so far reaching that they've been able to come to Canada, they've gone to the UK, and of course for multiple states and cities in America. And so the show was great because essentially it's a live taping, but one of the best parts of the show is the question and answers. They get letters, sometimes very outrageous from people, and you're like, wow, but you thought my life was bad. This person's living some crazy drama. And so people ask their questions live, and I'm like, have you no shame? Why are you talking about this in public? But it's so fun because this is what we do as a culture. We talk about stuff, we laugh about it. It's a comedy podcast. The way that Black folks get through things, that we laugh. Things are shitty, but we laugh through it, and that's what this podcast basically is about. They recently just had, last week, and I wish I was able to go, they recently had their 12th anniversary show in New York where one of the hosts lives. And not only did they have the show, they had a pop-up. So all types of merch actually have a couple of their shirts. They had merch. They had a meet and greet. Even there are communities who have been able to interact within each other because they've met at a show. There's people who've gotten married at the show. There's people who started movies because of the show. And so just from being intentional about a place, a location, whatever else, and people fly from all over the world to come to this now. Apparently I listened to the live show last week, and apparently people came from London to be at that show. It is that far reaching. So as long as you are intentional about your place and whatever else, people know that A, it's a safe space. There are other folks who are like me. in thought, whatever else. We are coming together to laugh. We're coming together to get through the tough times. And we're coming to support these two people because even those two hosts have come through a long way to hardships to get through where they are. And so we feel like, oh, this is family, this is my cousin, whatever else. And so I grabbed my friends and took them to meet with other friends. And that's how it is. Okay, third is establish regularity and predictability. So remember I said you have to be constant. You have to be consistent. Be predictable and reliable, because whether it's data points that you're showing on your social media points, whatever, or your audience that you're talking to, they know that you're going to post every Tuesday, maybe at this time, whatever else. In fact, with The Read, they post every Thursday afternoon. There have been weeks where they have not posted and they've gotten hundreds of messages saying, where the fuck's the podcast? Are you guys okay? And there have been weeks where one of the hosts was like, I attempted suicide. We're not doing it this week. So it's that concept where if you missed once and but you can always have your audience will understand, like, hey, I'm going through some rough shit. It's not happening this week. And they'll be like, cool, no problem. But if you are inconsistent here and there, whatever else, it wrecks your brand in a way, because your audience can't trust you. It breaks the sense of trust and, compatibility, right? So what level of commitment are you able to sustain? Can you post once a week? Can you post every day? Don't. Can you post once a month? That's more realistic. Some of my other podcasts, they're only post every couple weeks, and that's fine. But it's really about how much again, with community organizing, you can only pour so much out of yourself so you can pour out other people, right? What can you sustain? How often are you going to post? What's the general format? Is there a beginning, middle, and end? Just like The Read, you have Black Excellence, which you talk about cool stuff that Black people did or stuff in the news. You have the hot topics, so general gossip stuff about celebrities, which is hilarious. Then you have the question and answer period, the outrageous story that should honestly be on TikTok or a gossip column. And then you have their Read, which is where they call out other people, brands, anyone can get it. They just cuss everybody out, and it's pretty funny. But I know that when I tune into The Read, there are going to be four aspects of the show that's going to be happening. With Vibe Check, I know they're going to talk about a couple of subjects. They talk about what's their vibe this week. They check in at the beginning. How are you doing? What's your vibe? They talk about whatever topic they're going to do. They talk about different things that are making them happy. It can be a video, it can be a music thing, it can be an article. And then Saeed, because he's a poet, he reads a piece of poetry every week. And I'm not a poetry person, but I'm sat for that poetry every week. And it makes me feel great. It makes me feel sad. It makes me reflect. I know that's coming. And so that's where you have to have a format for each of your podcasts to really realize what am I going to be sat for? Am I excited for what you're going to present each week? Are you going to do it a little different way? Cool, no problem. Okay. Involve others by inviting shared ownership. So very quickly on this, this is all the maintenance and grunt work, and what you can delegate or do yourself, or make sure that either way, you have to make sure that this is how you keep the machine running and keep it humming so that you get good results. What needs to be done every day? What needs to be done regularly? Do you need to have editorial meetings? Do you need to edit? Do you need to write a script? Do you need to do any of those things? Go do those things, but set a schedule for them, however you want to work, because there's different ways to work. Recognize achievements and talents. If there's other people who are working with you or people in your community, and you're like, hey, you're really good at making everybody feel better. You share really good memes. You tell good jokes. You're good at organizing people. You're good at calling people out on their bullshit. Use those talents accordingly so that your movement can keep going. This happens for community organizing, but it can also happen for a podcast community, whether it's big or small. There are different people who bring different talents. Recognize them and use them. But don't overextend yourself. This is much for me as anyone else. You ask for help. Don't overextend yourself, and receive the help. Because if people want to help you, take it. It's okay. You're not losing power. You're not relinquishing power if you're doing this. Wow, you can hear myself say this is crazy. Therapy works, guys. And lastly, go do the thing and let things happen. So, as an ending to this, not coming up. Let me refresh. Yay, technical difficulties. Okay, so this is Book Club Toronto. So it's a project that my friend Adrian started a while ago. We actually met while working at the YMCA talking about community organizing. We have been nerds we talk mostly about music, but we've talked about various things over the years. We're both passionate about politics, community, all that stuff. And a lot of our chats in person, he does this with a lot of other folks in his community. And so what he's done is taken those chats and community efforts and really turned into a lot of ecosystem of really cool content extensions. He calls it Book Club Toronto. So when the pandemic hit in 2020, we were all obviously isolated. A few things saved my life. One of them was Instagram DJ sets, live DJ sets on Instagram and Twitch. The other one was a lot of Zoom chats. And the last one was a group chat with Adrian and a few other folks. We would watch Insecure, whoever's Insecure. I was going to say, people Insecure. We would watch Insecure together and then talk about it afterwards, especially when Twitter was going nuts out after every Sunday after it, but we like talking about it ourselves. And a lot of us in that group, we are still connected. And we've been parts of different aspects of the book club since. So book club is really to talk about more music than books, but it's turned into a podcast on ISO Radio, which is based down at Stock Market. It's actually more music based. There's more DJs and stuff on there, but there's a couple of shows called Queries and Anecdotes that Adrian has run. And I've been a guest host on his podcast before. And it's mostly just talking about, lifestyle stuff, music. It's always music based, but we talk into different aspects of life, like community and politics and things like that go from there. So it's turned into, he's managed to make live events out of this. He ran events at Toronto Metropolitan University because of it. We've had the podcast. That's a zine that we made. I forgot to bring it because I forgot, but I'm in that too. But yeah, we made a zine out of this thing. And so that's real. It's an ecosystem of different aspects of content. We are in different places. It happens when we want it to happen. It's not constant. But it's like, cool, do we feel like doing this for this moment? Does this feel right? Okay, cool, let's do this. We're not just doing it because we want to make money or we want to be famous. We're doing this because we like doing it. We like making things. And so that's really a cool thing that has went from essentially a Zoom group chat in 2020 to giving opportunities to local artists to have a live showcase to an audience, to having a zine, to having a podcast, to doing all these different things. And I've been very lucky to be a part of that. So, to recap very quickly, approaching your podcast as local community organizing, you anchor your intention, you prototype, you establish regularity, and you involve others, but also just go do it. Stop planning, being like, oh my gosh, you're going to be perfect. No, just do it. Again, this is more to myself and as well as y'all. Just go do the thing. It's okay. You can fail along the way and it's fine. And most of the time, because I was a musician before, nobody knows or cares when you fuck up. You can miss a couple of notes. I used to play trumpet. I used to be so scared when I played in jazz band in high school. I was like, oh my God, I fucked it up. And I was like, that was so awesome. I was like, you guys didn't hear any of that? And they were like, no. And most of the time, it's just all it goes to say is like, just go do it. Most people don't notice it. And most of the time, they really don't care. They most care that you're doing the thing and that you're showing up. And then you trust the process. You approach your podcast as a community project. When you do it that way, it can give it more meaning and more opportunities to grow into something beyond your initial intentions. You might have made it to be, this is about gaming, this is about art, but it could be even more than that. It could be an ecosystem of things. So, yeah, and let's leave you with that because it's about the process of getting it. You get what you fight for / work for, not what you wish for. A lot of people are wishing these days. It's one thing I've noticed a lot on social. It's like you expect to have the thing, I want to be famous, I want to be a creator, I want to do this, but you're not willing to put in the work to get there. You just want the results, but you get what you fight for and not what you wish for. That's what happens when you do your podcast too. And when you organize it with your community and also with yourself. All right. So that's it, everyone. Thank you so much. Just before there's questions, that's my link tree. I have not a podcast, but I have a Substack. My main thing is writing. I would love for you to join my newsletter. It's called Put You on Game. I talk about branding. I talk about social media. I talk about different things. Next one that's coming out is about the Buy Canadian movement, which, spoiler alert, it's bullshit. For different reasons. So as a marketer, I can't say that. My website's there. You can see all of my work. You can take a look. So with that, I will take questions. Actually, I'll go back here. Yes, question. Yes. Yeah, super important. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what is how you suggest I do that? Like how is that?
For Facebook specifically?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on a couple things. Like who do you want to reach, right? So most of these groups come through word of mouth. Yeah. Like, does anyone remember Buns? Who remembers Buns? Yes, again, my people. Buns was a bartering group that happened here in Toronto like 10 years ago. I don't know if whoever still got an email from them last week, they're like, it's back. And I'm like, do we need this still? I don't know. But Buns came through word of mouth because when I was working in community organizations and broke as hell, I was like, how am I going to barter? Because the main thing is that there's no cash. You barter for things, right? So it's how I was able to furnish my first apartment through bartering for things. But it's because I had heard about it from a friend who's like, yo, it's good. So dope. You can get it for nothing. And I was still using it right up until like 6 years ago. So all that to say is like, if you build it, they will come. I know Field Dreams is so lame, but you have to build it first and then get other people to tell other people about it. Word of mouth is still the best marketing anyone can do. It's what's trumped everything, like social media, all of that. And I've seen all of it. It's still word of mouth works. So you build the Facebook group and be like, here are our rules. Here's what we're here for. The best groups that I'm in have a code of conduct, not necessarily a code of conduct, but I know what you're there for. I'm here for this, that, and the other. Here is how we're going to be. You're going to be nice. You're not going to be a jerk. This is how you're posting. Put it in this style, in ISO, in search of this. I need this, that. They're like, actually, Buns taught me how to do that. Like they were like, you have to post a very specific way. Otherwise your stuff wouldn't even get approved to be posted, right? So if you build the group and you're like, I want, even there's one of the biggest groups in Toronto is like film group. They're looking for folks to work on different things, right? So I can't remember what it's called, but yeah. So what's different from that? How can you like? There's that group, which is great, but what makes you unique from that? What group can you serve that's maybe being underserved by that group? You find a different solution and amazing. So you found your niche. That's half the job. So now you just have to make sure you build it so that people will come to it. And you put your word out in other groups. Because that's the other thing that's the other way that Buns actually grew too, is that they posted in other groups. Other people post in other groups and they mentioned, I was like, what the hell is Buns? Then you go in the group and then that's how it splintered into like West Side Buns, East Side Buns, North Markham Buns, whatever else. But the West one was always the best one. I used to live in Roncy, so that was my favorite one. Oh, Mastodon. Mastodon's interesting, but it's very insular. You have to be, I don't think it's not accessible. That was when Twitter went bust. Everyone was like, I heard of Mastodon before and I had actually checked it out. But the reason why I didn't stay on it was because I was like, there is too much work to be on here. I feel like I need to be a coder to be on here, right? I can't do it easily. If that's already your thing, if your mind works that way, which kind of jealous of because it's very logical, whatever else, cool, right? You're able to, but you have to build servers to be able to connect. The biggest thing about Mastodon, it is not easy to connect with other people. For the regular person, if you were already in like marketing, whatever else, or if you already knew how to like build servers, whatever else, sure, it was easy. But there's a saying about technology that I like to go back to where it's not revolutionary if it's not accessible. Mastodon was not accessible, and that's why it hasn't taken off. And it never will. And that, honestly, and that is okay. Social platforms in general should not need to grow exponentially because that's impossible. There's only 7 billion people on the earth. We can't all have a social media account. Most of the people are either here or probably India or China. And that's, everyone else maybe has one. So Mastodon it's an interesting space, but I didn't stay there because I was like, this is too much work now. Mm. I don't know, and I'm excited to find out. I think they'll probably lean harder into Instagram because it's the devil you know. Even again, like it's wide meta platform, so WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, all of those things are still around because they're reliable and people are lazy. They don't necessarily want to try anything, especially when I say people, I mostly mean Gen X and millennials. Because I can say that most of my family is Gen X, and then there's us millennials. Most of us are lazy. We don't like change. We don't want to try anything new. We'll only do it if like with Black folks say, who all is over there? Okay, then I'm going there, right? It's the trust thing where it's like, if you're there, I might go there. And I only might go there if people are having a good time and if I might have a good time. And the reason why TikTok got so big is because people started sending each other TikToks and like, oh shit, I don't have this app. Let me get, now it's like you can't watch it if don't have the app, which is stupid. But it wasn't always like that, right? But if TikTok goes away, oh man, I think I'm dying to see someone create something different. But I think realistically, my heart says I want something else to happen, but my brain says people will lean harder into what they already know. So YouTube, especially for visual mediums, Instagram and YouTube. For text, it's why Blue Sky is so popular. Again, like with Mastodon, the reason why Blue Sky is doing well is because it is basically like Twitter. It's basically a Twitter. But the difference between all of them is content moderation. That's what no one wants to pay for and everyone expects. And that's why you feel happy or sad or whatever. The difference is content moderation. So if there's nothing happening on an app and everyone's just running wild like Twitter, it's because there's no content moderation. That's the key to all of this. Yeah. It is now. We'll see what happens when they add ads. I'm on it. I do test things here and there. Like what I'll do is I'll test the same thing on Threads versus Blue Sky and see what happens. And sometimes stuff picks up on Blue Sky and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the same thing will pick up. Like, what did I post last week? I posted about Keith Lee, how he went to Britain. Anyone know who Keith Lee is? Yeah. Yeah, he's a Black food influencer he was from the States, but he's gone international. He went to the UK with me and had a really bad time. What his problem is for me is that he doesn't have a fixer. He tries to get crowdsourced opinions on where should I go eat. But the problem with getting crowdsourced is you're going to get shitty recommendations. So he always gets burned. I'm like, bro, get a fixer, get a team. But I know that's his niche where it's like, I don't do it, it's just me. Anyway. So all I have to say is I posted about that on Threads and it picked up. And I don't know why, but it was more folks who followed him that are mostly on Threads that would talk about it. I post on Blue Sky, and the folks I follow who follow me don't know who he is or don't know about the situation, right? So it really depends on. Threads is interesting at picking up different things, but what I hate about Threads right now is that there's so much copying, like straight up content jacking. Like people are copying other people's stuff and getting more engagement for it. And even though the internet is like everyone copies, there's at least the tenet, at least it used to be, where if you copy, you at least tag the other person. Now it's just, you just straight up jack the other person's content, and people have been called out for it, and people have complained. Adam Sari is like on it, he's like, yeah, I'll do something about it. And I'm like, you're not IT. You're the head of Instagram. What are you doing here? Go fix it. So yeah, Threads is interesting, but I'm interested to see where it goes more once ads show up. And I think it's already going the way. I prefer Blue Sky because I think there's more intellectual people on there for me. But Threads is interesting if I want to just catch up on A, bullshit, B, more cultural trends and stuff like that. But the smarter people I follow are more active on Blue Sky. Yeah. I'm neither here nor there right now. It's more like a wait and see, but I'm just like, okay. But if it's a text-based thing, it's Blue Sky for me. Anyone else?
I'm kind of curious when it comes to creation with podcasts or whatever the case may be you're interested in doing.
Yeah.
How important it is to diversify? And by that I mean we saw when TikTok looked like it was going to be banned first. People were starting to post the content they had been posting solely to TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, to try and not lose their audience. But I feel like at the same time, it's trying to find that right balance where you're not oversaturating your material and overwhelming yourself, but at the same time, still wanting to reach a very variation of audiences.
Yeah, you build small and slow. So unless you're like a blue chip company like Coke or whatever else, you're not going to have the manpower or the money to be everywhere. You cannot be everywhere. And actually, that's one of the first things I recommend to clients and other brands. You cannot be everywhere, because if you're everywhere, you're nowhere. And so you have to start small and slow and be intentional about, this is why I talked about be intentional about your place, right? Because if you know you're mostly going to be, depending on your audience, if you know they're only going to be talking mostly through text, So that's where a Discord, a Reddit, whatever, that's great. And Reddit is also one of my other social platforms. That's my favorite because, I mean, obviously am I the asshole, all this other stuff is great, right? But it's more about like people are connecting through, or TV recaps are actually really good on Reddit too, or opinions. So if you are more of a text person and you know your people are text people, you're going to be on more text-based platforms. So if you're building community, it's still Reddit. If you're going to be more visual, whatever else, you might want to do. And also, different platforms have different fortes, right? Like Twitch has always been friendlier to gamers. More DJs are showing up there. Like I said at the beginning, like my life was saved by DJs, and most of them started on Instagram. But because Instagram was hostile towards like DJ sets, you have, it's a compilation of other people's songs, right? And so Instagram, not knowing what they were doing at the time, they started to ban people from being on the app because it's copyright. So like, fuck it. I'll go to YouTube. YouTube's like, you can't be here. Fuck it. I'll go to Twitch. Twitch is like, come on in, we got you. So that's where DJs, and now more DJs are professionally going onto Twitch because A, they can make money, and B, they don't have to worry about the bullshit of copyright infringement because it's Amazon, they know they have the rights to everything, so they're okay. But that's what I mean by like, you start slow and being intentional about, depending on what you want to create and where it will most likely live and be not hassle-free, but less friction, the better. That's where you'd be intentional about where to start. Any questions? Yes.
That way, if you just don't put your trust in the platform because they can change really fast.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't put all your eggs in one place. Who was around when Instagram was down? Remember when Instagram was down for like a day? Fucking disaster. I was in an ad agency, and the brand managers were freaking out. I was, what are you gonna do? I'm like, nothing. Just leave it alone. We'll be fine. But there are people who really lost their livelihoods, like because one day can cost a lot of money. Yeah.
But if your biggest fans who have their email, that's just like
email is still the best.
It's a safety.
It's boring as hell, but still the best. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. In that these platforms can go. I mean, TikTok literally can go. It can go in a month. We don't know if it will be here. Instagram can go at any time. You don't. That's the other thing with that's the other reason why I'm like diversify it, because you can't put all your eggs in one basket because these platforms don't owe you shit. They don't. Maybe a little bit of money because they made some creator funds. But in general, the platforms don't owe you shit. You are making money for them simply by being on there because you're providing an audience for them to sell ads to. They don't owe you anything. And so you take what you created and keep it centralized and maybe put it out in different places that if somehow it goes away or gets milkshake ducks, does anyone know what that actually means? Okay, thank you. I was like, at least one person knows that. Go look that up. Urban Dictionary is a good place to do it. Even Substack is having some issues right now because of their founders, right? And so a lot of folks are like, oh shit, I gotta go to Beehive, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. I'm on the fence because I'm like, I'm black, everyone's hostile to me. Like, it's fine. But at the end of the day, if it's not right for you, it should not be hard for you to move. Because these platforms they're not loyal to you, so you don't have to be loyal to them. And that goes for podcasts. Any other questions? Okay. Oh.
Your own website.
Yes.
Everything can go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I do. Yes, I do. That is my main thing. Is my website is my core thing. It's my portfolio. Like I've even my last job, my boss who hired me said I got the role because of an article I've written in the past, which I had on my website. Right. And so for me, because I do a lot of things, my website is my main thing. But the thing I like doing, and whether it goes away or not, it's fine. I'll write on paper. I started writing on paper. I will end my life writing on paper. It's fine. But Substack is where I'm building because people are like, I want to know your opinions on things, or LinkedIn is like, now it's like Facebook was like, oh, we want to hear you talking. Oh my God, fine. Here you go read my Substack. It helps me build, it helps you find out about me, and then maybe we can work together. Cool. It's a promotional tool. But an email, like we were saying before, email is still central. That will probably be the last thing that will go away because email is still, it's insecure depending on what you're doing with it. But email has been constant over the last 30 years. It's not going anywhere. And that's why your information is it's why you end up on email lists that you never thought you signed up for. Because your data is still very valuable. It's oil. It's a currency. Your data is currency. And so that's why email is still it's very low stakes, but it's very high like return. If you have a newsletter for your Substack or a newsletter for your podcast or things like that, definitely do that because it's still a good way for people to connect with you. And then depending on what platform you're on, if you're on Substack, you can have a chat, you can do a podcast on Substack. Beehive has different options too. There are different things you can do with it. But the very basic ones, the ones that no one thinks about and things are like second nature, those are the things that will be the last thing to go away. Threads might be here or not, Blue Sky might be here, and whatever, TikTok. But email and web. Okay. Thanks, everyone.